Hiya! Welcome to this, my 74th episode of VideoFuzzy. I'm your host, Terry J. Amon, sifting my basket of media memories, and in this installment, titled The Psychic is Always Right, I look at The Unusuals, and in what I've been watching, shows aired over Black History Month witness society's struggle with growing pains, however slow and disappointing at times, first season finale of Ashes to Ashes in my classic collection, series finale for Superstore in my current collection, IFC is airing episodes of Kids in the Hall, and Joss Whedon, what the hell? Welcome to the show.
He doesn't have that on video, does he? We'll find out together on VideoFuzzy.
As of this past month, we are both fully vaccinated, so greetings from House Moderna. Looking forward to taking a few more risks, including a few road trips, and as of this past week, more swimming. I've tried to avoid avoidable exposure, well, we both have, for fear of either of us getting sick, and we're definitely going to be doing the social distancing, hand washing, and masking up for the foreseeable, since North Dakota's been tripping at the finish line a little. But I've also been able to get a lot done around here as spring gets underway, getting into the yard some. I've gotten some home repairs going. My new circular saw, I was able to reframe our basement access, which has been a mess of broken plastic and duct tape for literally years. Got it all cleaned up, so that's looking sharp now. And part of all the stuff I was able to watch for my current collection was while I got my new sewing machine set up, hemming a lot of worn hems and longish inseams I ran into with new work slacks. I set it up, did some trial runs to get familiar with the machine, and got a bunch of hems stitched while watching a pretty good range of programming, especially movies, so that was fun.
Call this meeting to order.
Calling up a little old business. I meant to do this last time. Seriously, I could not have done this without him, but shout out to dear friend and friend of the podcast, Mark Bailey, also known as Grill Wolf, for hooking me up with Forvo.com and the pronunciation of oh my god in Gaelic. Was Ladia gasps in Gaelic. As my dear sweet video fuzzies might recall, I got a bit cheeky in my classic collection review of Celtic Thunder, and my accent work for that bit wandered the length and breadth of that sceptred isle, but I'd never have managed Boas Ladia without his kind assistance and Forvo.com, and I'm grateful. As always, I take all merited blame for my accent work.
Friday Night Feature.
Sure, there's a lot going on, but I figured now was a good chance to pause and pull up from disc 1111, Noah Hawley's Fizzy Cop Shop, The Unusuals, around the halfway mark for this short-run series. I had episode 5 titled 42. Jeremy Renner as Detective Jason Walsh wakes up next to Monique Kernan as Detective Allison Beaumont, contented, happy even, entirely at ease, without a care in the world. Well, one, but we'll get there. As reveals go, I liked how it happened. But yeah, day could not have started out any nicer. He opens the diner he runs as a side gig. First customer of the day loops in, plunks down, and orders pancakes in his engaging Texas drawl. They exchange a few words. Walsh passes him a syrup, and blam! The guy's drawn on him. Open fire. Without his slightly psychic, preternatural situational awareness, Walsh would have been a goner. As it was, he deflected the shot, which anyways knocked the gunman off balance. He squeezed off another couple rounds before Walsh drew on him with a sawed-off shotgun from behind the counter. From where he was, framed in the doorway, it seems impossible that Walsh would have missed, but then there were 40 more minutes of story to tell, with at least some of them taken up with Allison on the floor behind him, with a gunshot wound to the gut. Cue the title sequence for The Unusuals, Noah Hawley's Brooklyn-style cop dramedy. As intriguing as it was short-lived, we join our heroes at about the halfway mark for the series, as aired. We've gotten the tiniest bit of backstory on this breakfast order, placed by Ryan O'Han as ne'er-do-well ex-con Frank Lutz. Heading into the diner, he'd been on the phone with Josh Close as Detective Henry Cole, born again, by the book, a partner both to Detective Beaumont and, years ago, her assailant. Frank Letts is a guy who likes to spin magic with words, magical realities in which he's been wronged by all of life, driven by greed and jealousy. Having tracked down Cole, his former partner in crime, who at the time went by Nathan Granger, he first had him compromise security for a camera store robbery, seeking to recover evidence targeting Walsh's partner Kowalski, who was replaced in the opening moments of the series by Amber Tamblyn as Detective Casey Schrager. Then, suspecting Walsh was onto them, Letts tried to make the diner hit look like an early morning robbery. As the episode progresses, the country-fried Letts tries to make it seem like he's holding all the aces. Grandmaster Flash Chess Champion Mastermind, the planner's planner, Season 5 Dimensions, who even once ID'd was always one step ahead of all the cops circling to ensnare him, even as he threatened to murder or kidnap or set fire to Cole's fiancée at her cake tasting unless Cole tracks down $20,000 in small bills. I mean, seriously, at this point I'm like, there's small time, and then there's this frickin' guy, guided 8 years for robbing an armored car, but yeah, hand him off a year at minimum wage and we're square. When Cole confronts him later, he says, I talked to those old guys in the park, and they said you're a lousy chess player. Frank laughs it off, but in the short amount of time I'd been refamiliarizing myself with these characters, that was really standing out. Targeting Kowalski to suppress evidence drew all the more focus. His targeting Walsh actually injured Beaumont and thus further estranged her partner Cole, then doubling down and threatening Cole's fiancée, and no wonder Cole lured him out to the pier to gun him down. When it comes to strategery, Frank is basically pants. Walsh is better. He noticed Cole's reaction to the sketch artist's work, figured he knew more than he was letting on, and figured they'd be meeting up, which is why Walsh planted a tracking device on Cole and followed him out. The reveal everyone knew or didn't on Walsh's hooking up with Beaumont was that it was also terminal. Walsh said the night before the diner attack, for 3 hours, all Ellison could talk about was her partner Cole's wedding. "She's in love with Cole," he said. I don't know where that went over the course of the next 5 episodes, but it doesn't feel like an entirely throwaway aspect of Cole's relationship with Beaumont. While Walsh and Schrager are determined to keep Cole's secret a secret, Walsh has talked to him about his past, determined he's reformed, and seriously, the great large brass ones on Detective Cole, with his prison record, fingerprint record and all, qualifying for the detective's exam and then taking and passing it. Wow. They're staying in character, and then there's a Noah Hawley creation. See, I've never been a huge fan of procedurals. Profilers, sure, but procedurals, they blend a little. Noah Hawley, this guy is one hell of a storyteller. Everywhere I find him, he's doing something a little extra. Reimagining Fargo for the small screen, centering a Marvel production on a neurodivergent anti-hero, and structuring exactly 3 seasons around the story of his transformation. And then here we have this quirky New York police comedy, of which the B story of this episode I have not even touched on, and I should, because it is where the episode title comes in. When Harold Perrineau and Adam Goldberg as detectives Banks and Delahoy respond to the shooting, Banks notices the cash register is set at $42.42, which he feels is significant. Since turning 42, Banks has felt strong premonitions of his own death, and his most recent turn as Michael on Lost makes this aspect of his character all the more compelling. Sarge actually sends them to a bomb scare on a city bus at 4th and 2nd, which raises Detective Banks' hackles, and then sends them through the roof when there are actually 42 passengers to interview. Interviewing the multilingual passengers is mostly played for laughs, lightening the attitude ahead of Banks' interview with a psychic, played with hushed intensity by Joanne Adler, who foresaw the bomb scare and knew the bomber was going to escape. "He's going to try again this afternoon," she says. "You're going to catch him." She is, however, convinced that she is going to die on a bus that day. This seems unlikely, but a call comes in that confirms her one prediction, a man with a grenade on a city bus. They're also able to get a positive ID on him and a search warrant for his apartment, where they secure evidence pointing to a third attempt planned, this time for bus 42. Banks doesn't know what to think, but secures the line and confronts the bomber, armed once again with a grenade. Banks is trying to talk him down, but the bomber, agitated, pulls the pin and throws the grenade. Banks leapt to cover the grenade and save the other passengers. As it turns out, it was a dud, but they did manage to catch the guy. Banks interprets all this as a cue to stop looking for signs and throw caution to the wind. They caught the bad guy, so the psychic is safe. He's going to stop wearing bulletproof vests everywhere, knock it off with all the herbal supplements, and just enjoy his life. Until the news comes in that the psychic's second prediction came true as well, that she was indeed killed while heading home on a city bus. Shaken, he pulls his vest back on, still in life's crosshairs for at least the foreseeable. The fun thing about psychics in a piece of dramatic fiction is that they can, in fact, always be right. The writers can predict the future on page 3 because they're also in charge of what happens on page 20. Talented actors and nervous violins can make us believe the mysterious hand of fate because they are, in fact, guiding it. But this team of writers drew at least a little bit of spookiness from Harold Perrineau's former project, pulling in references to one of the significant numbers in Lost. It doesn't hurt that that number has also been identified as the definitive answer to life, the universe, and everything. The episode conversed on the topic of fate and determinism, offered tantalizing windows in both directions, and in the end would not offer definitive conclusions for the simple reason that it is a television program, and that's not what any of us are here for. Harold Perrineau knew he was safe leaping on that grenade because he read ahead and saw he had lines later. For us, and for Detective Banks, not so much. Our decisions reflect whatever mix of bravery, cowardice, determination, and self-preservation we'll bring into any situation. The discussion is intriguing, but does not itself go anywhere. Detective Banks is fated to live for as long as Harold Perrineau has a contract, and while inconclusive, the conversation itself is certainly on brand for Noah Hawley. One quick aside I intend to revisit later. Most episodes of The Unusuals opened with a fun, quirky intercom announcement by a dispatcher with both an accent and an attitude. For instance, this one she said, "Aloha, Second Squad. Be advised the dispatch is officially declaring Friday Hawaiian Shirt Day because, yeah, that's the kind of power I wield." I want to go into this more once I figure out how many episodes I actually have. As of now, I know I for sure have 6, but it'd be fun to pull them up and share some of her funnier observations if I'm able to. Cross Connection. Tracking the unusuals for my Studio 6 Feet Under challenge won't pose much of a challenge at all. I already ran the sequence for Lost, after all, and with Harold Perrineau's involvement, it's barely a step removed by way of Alice and Janney, but I wanted to track it for Amber Tamblyn and Jeremy Renner as principal characters. What I found was that Amber was in a 6th season episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the run-up to the musical episode Once More with Feeling, in fact. More directly, she was in Sister of the Traveling Pants with Studio 60's Bradley Whitford, so that link is pretty solid. Jeremy Renner actually appears as Hawkeye in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so his connectivity will be of some interest. The Unusuals was his most significant series work before signing on as Clint Brandt, aka Hawkeye, 10 years ago in Thor. He appeared in the Buffy spin-off Angel in 2000 as a vampire sired by Angelus in the way back when. I was not expecting that. It looks most directly like he was in Tag in 2018 with Rashida Jones, who was in Parks and Rec with Bradley Whitford. It's kind of a tenuous connection for two fairly significant franchises, the Joss-verse and MCU, especially given Whedon's work on superhero movies, not to mention both Bradley Whitford of Studio 60 and Richard Jenkins of 6 Feet Under's appearance actually in Joss Whedon's Cabin in the Woods, but I'm threading a very specific needle here in this effort, so it holds. The fact that both Renner and Tamblyn were in Joss-verse projects before landing up as leads in this Noah Hawley production is kind of a neat discovery unto itself. In other connections, I found the owner of the Café Diem from Eureka, Chris Gauthier, was in the Harper's Island murder mystery, along with Jim Beaver of Supernatural, which was kind of a neat find. Alex O'Loughlin played an unsub in a 4th season episode of Criminal Minds, and I found Golden Thread Mark A. Shepard turned up in an episode of Dollhouse, and on disc 1119, an episode of Castle featured Francis Capper from Veronica Mars, and I was kind of surprised to notice this, but Golden Thread for this installment installment Bailey Chase as William Sorensen, FBI agent and ex-beau of Detective Kate Beckett.
Golden thread.
I was thrown because, yeah, I was much more familiar with this role as a very similar character, Oklahoma City Police Department Detective Butch Ada in Saving Grace, so his appearance on Castle seemed like a crossover episode. As it turns out, Bailey Chase has been on my screen a lot, and I wanted to take this opportunity to explore that a little. In scrolling back through IMDb, I was surprised anew to note that he'd also appeared in Buffy the Vampire Slayer's 4th season initiative arc as Riley's friend and fellow agent turned Franken-soldier, Graham Miller. That was enough of a surprise. I pulled up the 4th season episode, The Eye and Team, in which Professor Walsh sends Buffy on what she intends to be a one-way mission, and the initiative is tracking Spike to Giles' apartment. But perhaps of greater interest, Willow's friendship with Amber Benson as Tara has progressed to their first sleepover. Buffy also became sleepover friends with Riley in this episode, but neither of their arcs took the turn that Maggie Walsh's did after Adam's most recent upgrade took hold. She didn't die exactly, but she wasn't in charge of as much after that, and since Buffy helped secure the Polka Demon's arm they used, it felt a little like instant karma. But yeah, Bailey Chase, wow, like 1,000 years ago, tracking Spike and concerned with Riley's infatuation with Buffy. Clearly, Nathan Fillion wasn't the only Joss-verse connection to Castle. Chase also showed up in the Drew Carey show, and he was on Charmed, which I didn't watch, but I've certainly seen enough of to know about Julian McMahon's recurring role. And moving into greater likelihood of appearing in this archive, he was in Ugly Betty, and then I see on discs 841 and 842, I've got the Criminal Minds episode, Penelope, where the team's tech chief, Penelope Garcia, played by Kristen Vagnes, is targeted. He appeared in this episode along with Nicholas Brendan from Buffy and Mark Van from Angel, so it was a mini Jossapalooza unto itself. Incidentally, since the recent Charisma Carpenter and Michelle Trachtenberg reveals and several other voices stepping up in support, it is impossible to separate the creator from the creation. It's just a reality. Joss Whedon's work has produced and supported a lot of powerfully positive energy in this society. People have felt seen and supported who otherwise might not. People have felt empowered who otherwise might not. Actual social change has been generated and supported because people felt they could make a difference who otherwise might not. When you consider the man has gathered such minds and hearts together to create these universes and craft the stories that so inspired this following, his personal failings become all the more upsetting, a grim consideration that what little we know frames vast swaths that we do not. A public face of genial, well-spoken support of women, borne out by characters who took a righteous aim against an inequitable status quo. Buffy, Willow, Cordy, flawed, complicated characters, such strength, Faith, Zoe, Joyce. My God, these women he drew, this public gynephoria, called repeatedly and with greater urgency into question, revelations from the set, behind the scenes, shared widely enough I won't repeat them here, but his own devoted fan site on Twitter, though, calling out the, quote, toxic and abusive work environment, end quote, described by the actors involved, now with an asterisk to his name, formerly Whedon-esque if you're looking for them. They pinned the tweet. And as I've posted elsewhere, quote, he's the strongest argument for separating the artist from the art in modern history, and maybe the biggest test for whether that's even possible. As I'm writing this, The Nevers has premiered on HBO Max, as credited series creator Joss Whedon. People seem properly enwrapped, and again, probably it's amazing. Joss somehow manages to continue to surround himself with amazing and talented people who tell brilliant and amazing stories and everyone loves them. Then, sometimes decades later, we find out seriously disturbing things about how these stories were told, and we wonder what our role was in the perpetuation of that environment. Well, I don't have HBO Max, so I won't likely be seeing them one way or the other anytime soon. And obviously they're brilliant, and obviously they're the best stories ever told, and what am I, dumb for not streaming them? And yeah, maybe I am. But for God's sake, at what point do we stop feeding the monster? Well, In the run of this project, I have celebrated the works of Joss Whedon, Roman Polanski, and Woody Allen, all with a pretty good idea of who they are throughout and how any discussion of their work must at some point involve a furrowed brow. But in the end, each is only part of the work being portrayed, story being told, and art being created. It may absolutely step forward for independent consideration, however dimmed by association. And pro tip: if you've damaged trust through problematic behavior, which does not begin to describe it, it's never a bad time to step forward, publicly acknowledge and apologize for the pain you caused and your part in causing it, and also to whom you caused it, and thus begin the process of repairing that trust. Otherwise, we're all just waiting for the inevitable leaked cell phone footage. Where was I? Ah yes, Bailey Chase, golden thread in my collection, tracing from the 4th season of Joss Whedon's Buffy the Vampire Slayer, his appearance with recurring Jossverse actor Nathan Fillion in Castle, as well as, not in my collection, but the rookie Jossverse actor David Boreanaz in SEAL Team, Jossverse actor Nicholas Brendan in Criminal Minds, and with Holly Hunter throughout Saving Grace. Also in the 4th season of Damages with John Goodman, that was wild. He had a recurring character in Ugly Betty, that was unexpected. He was in A White Collar on USA, I might still have been watching that. He appeared in Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, and the season of 24 I did not watch. Also, Wisdom of the Crowd, which I made a lot of fun of in episode 11, if you want to pull that up. And not the episode he was in, I stopped watching that at the pilot. Bailey Chase walks through his scenes with quiet authority and an undeniable physicality that belies a thoughtful charisma and flashes of humor. He presented a believable cop in Saving Grace, a believable agent in Castle, and its strong, solid presence wherever he shows up. Great work. Now on VideoFuzzy, a fond reflection. I could not post this episode without I bid a fond farewell to the woman behind the scurrilous Lucille Bluth and mercenary Mallory Archer, only two of the pointedly hilarious creations of veteran comic actor Jessica Walter. No, I've never seen it, but according to IMDb, she's recently been paired, I've got to believe brilliantly, as Alice Brittlecrunch and At Home with Amy Sedaris. That's gonna be worth tracking down. That had to be a hoot. She's been Granny Goodness on Harley Quinn. Again, looking forward to finding that. And, hell, she was Mrs. Chuck in Hulu original series Difficult People. She, for sure, was. Had to pull that one up and watch it. Julie has fond memories of her improv group, but when she yes-ands her way into confessing to murder, both her sketchy confession and the spurious evidence refuting it enrages the bedridden Mrs. Chuck, who, well, it's a random improv troupe. It was at least 60-40. They'd all set it up with someone in the group's hospitalized aunt as a gotcha on Julie. But as it went on, I was like, talk about committing to a bet. Turns out, either way, the whole thing was just a troupe of actors in madcap Hulu tomfoolery. So, Jessica Walter, well done. Highlighting her appearance through this collection, I feel certain I have her as Grace's mom in Saving Grace. I saw her in The Big Bang Theory. I actually go into some detail about Arrested Development in episodes 34 and 68. Absolutely loved her in that. She has credits going back to the 50s, and I'll just say this. Timing dead on instincts. Her eyes would roast you. Her lines would land. Her zings were deadly because her characters were so exquisitely complete. This Hulu thing I pulled up just now, no, she didn't have a lot to do, but what she did killed because she sold it like ice cream on a hot day. Brash, funny, not afraid to go dark, and working right up until the end. For years of comedy, Jessica, just a light, a shining, shining star. Thank you so much.
What I've been watching.
Before I get into my current collection proper, it occurred to me recently that thanks to some marathon viewing post-Black History Month and ahead of the Oscars, my recent viewership has included narrative sagas of stories and biographies detailing the lives of Black people through centuries of American history. The Sundance Channel in February aired Alex Haley's groundbreaking 8-part exploration to his Mandingo warrior ancestry and roots. The series was unflinchingly broadcast just as it originally aired in 1977. I was a child when it first aired and feel certain we did not watch it, and I don't know that I ever saw it, certainly not in full, since that time. Tracing his family's history opened a narrative window on conditions faced by African slaves kidnapped from their home and those born in the United States, and the diverging political views held among whites, abolitionists versus pro-slavery forces, systems which denied people's humanity to their faces, men and women. However well documented and researched, Haley had to rely on oral histories and reconstructions, but even so, drew an incredibly compelling human drama, joy, pain, fear, love, indeed, as well as rape and gross sexual assault, or as also presented, a genteel provision of hospitality among the slave-owning class, which obviously gross and couldn't have helped in tracing a family's ancestry. Couples were split up, children sold away, as presented in Roots, as painful as however could be imagined. Roots traced black lives from about the middle of the 18th century through to post-Civil War Reconstruction, threading along one family's experiences, but its message encompassed a larger social message. Celebrate our humanity, the humanity of black lives, it says. Celebrate our history, the lives we lived, full, complete with all the feelings of love and pain and accomplishment, hope for better, and effort expended towards better. I enjoyed finally encountering this series and having the chance to watch it. I also watched Whoopi Goldberg's mid-1980s production of The Color Purple, which, time-wise, began a few decades after the principal focus of Roots. After giving birth to her abusive father's children, Celia is married off to Albert, the first man who asks, separating her from her sister, Nettie, the only joy in her life. She raises Albert's children, and he continues the same abuse that she's known her whole life. Nettie, Albert's first choice for marriage, comes to live with them for a while, and before long Albert is trying to sleep with her too. She fights him off and is banished, but not before she teaches Celia to read and promises to write her every day, though Albert doesn't let her know about any of the letters. Meanwhile, he's falling all over himself to be with a lounge singer, Shug Avery. As the family grows by age and marriage, Albert's son marries a big girl named Sophie, played by Oprah Winfrey, who speaks her mind more freely than laws allow in the 1930s, talking back to and then hauling off and hitting some white lady. She is beaten badly and does some time, then has to be a servant, and doesn't get to see her family for 8 years. It's a lot, this story. I mean, there's a lot going on, but it moves along really well, and you're rooting for these people to find joy and their connections. Shortly after the principal focus timeline for The Color Purple, I saw Lawrence Fishburne step through to the Sundance presentation of 1930s set Hoodlum, which seemed to be the New York precursor for what we were watching in the Kansas City-based 4th season of Fargo. Fishburne played Bumpy Johnson, enforcer for the Queen, Stephanie Sinclair, played by the great Cicely Tyson. The numbers racket, as presented, helped support Harlem, redistributing wealth and bringing in needed services to the underserved black community. When the mob, the person of Dutch Schultz, played by Tim Roth, tried muscling in, Johnson fought them, along with disloyalty from within their own operation, but at harrowing cost. It was cool seeing Shai McBride in this. I enjoyed him in Brian Fuller's Pushing Daisies. Next, I saw 2 different perspectives on the Chicago riots in 1968, with some interesting crossovers. Shaka King's Judas and the Black Messiah explored the community organization of Fred Hampton, played by Daniel Kaluuya, infiltrated by an FBI operative, Bill O'Neill, played by Lakeith Stanfield, perhaps harmlessly at first, but less and less so as events unfolded. Then, in Aaron Sorkin's The Trial of Chicago 7, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II played Bobby Seale of the Black Panthers, not involved, but arraigned with the others on charges of conspiracy brought by a Justice Department out for revenge. Kelvin Harrison Jr. appeared as Fred Hampton in this production. Sorkin's organization of this story highlighted the loonier aspects of the trial, which the post-roll narrative includes among these the fact that it happened at all. In Judas, series-long actor in Sorkin's The West Wing, Martin Sheen becomes the anti-Bartlett, J. Edgar Hoover. A joke from the pilot episode of The West Wing makes it into Sorkin's trial. I recently watched both Oscar-nominated movies with my friend and friend of the podcast, Jesse Zimmerman, excellent host and company, and I was intrigued by the glancing nature of Lens, watching similar timelines from different perspectives, and the award-worthy storycraft of both. I wanted to organize my reaction to this set of viewing not as self-congratulation for finally watching art produced by black people. I mean, The Color Purple was a Spielberg production. Not even as historical context for a lot of police brutality. We've witnessed such as a nation since before we were one. Indeed, as I was putting this all together, I encountered the following on a friend's social media. The only thing that has changed in this country since the Rodney King beatings is the picture quality. And it's tough to ignore the rise in mass shootings and anti-Asian hate crimes and hate crimes generally because you can't see this, it's an audio medium, but gestures vaguely. And one would suspect by their widespread introduction and passage among GOP-led states of bills banning gender affirmation for trans students that this was a serious problem, or indeed any kind of problem at all. What I'm saying is, we will not advance the cause of equality in this nation until we acknowledge its absence. We are not equal before the law. Our vote and our voice is not equal. We are not all equally safe to call it out. Understanding this is the beginning of empathy. Building our awareness is going to help. Seeking out these stories, even ones that don't end well, is going to help. I was happy so to devote some time recently and absolutely recommend.
Diving into my classic collection.
In my classic VHS-to-DVD collection, continuing my discussion from last time, on disc 1101, I watched the conclusion of the fourth season Bones episode, The Girl in the Mask, which featured a non-binary character, Dr. Haru Tanaka, played by Ali Maki. In 2009, in this Fox production, the conversation surrounding androgyny and transgender was still mired in, oh my God, what is it? The hushed conversation swirled behind Dr. Tanaka's back, appreciating their contribution to the investigation, but otherwise just laser-focused on whether they were male or female. Not content to honor the ambiguity, art and computer tech whiz bisexual and acknowledged hottie Angela Montenegro, played by Michaela Conlon, just could not anymore with the suspense. So, at the conclusion of the case, as Dr. Tanaka was leaving, she gave them a long, actively inappropriate hug for the situation, culturally and otherwise. Afterwards, she came back to the group and said, "I felt it move. He's a he." Good God, at a research institute? Well, fair enough on the pursuit of knowledge for its own sake, but in reality, no. Newsflash, non-binary persons need not confirm anything at all about their gender assignment at birth, alignment, identity, or orientation, especially in a work environment. Unless they're actively pursuing intimacy, where generally the other or others involved are apprised of the situation and their agreeability to it, what's going on in a person's pants, certainly in the context of a coworker, is seriously nobody's business at all whatsoever. And at this level of scholarship, probably this person has presented papers and published their work, and their preferred honorifics precede them, and everyone would already have known. Not to mention, probably in the several days they were working on the case, they likely have used the washroom a few times, you nosies. But yeah, in this case, a non-binary person was wheeled out onto the set so everyone could react and have exactly the conversations they all had for exactly this level of locker room indignity. A minor subplot played entirely for laughs, which, not even for the time, my dudes. That was gross. I had a big, huge thing about an episode of 24 I found on disc 1108 where Jack Bauer was just screaming into Janine Garofalo's face about the relative importance of national security over civil rights, but that's just every day on Facebook now, so pass. I did highlight the Desperate Housewives celebration of their 100th episode in episode 68, featuring the women on Wisteria Lane recalling late handyman Beau Bridges. Well, they followed that up within just a half dozen episodes with all the women recalling their fond memories of Edie Britt while driving to deliver her ashes to her estranged son. I mean, it's kind of insane that the writing team didn't notice this way too soon parallel. A bit of trivia, this episode, Season 5, Episode 19, Look Into Their Eyes and You See What They Know, was narrated by Nicolette Sheridan, one of the few not narrated by Brenda Strong as Mary Alice Young. I think Stephen Culpa's Bree's deceased husband Rex Vandekamp took over once in Season 3. Probably there are others. Like I said, it was rare. On disc 1105, I found Bob Odenkirk with the introduction of Saul Goodman as a character on the second season episode of Breaking Bad, and I suppose technically a backdoor pilot for spin-off prequel of the same name, Better Call Saul. I've been watching for past seasons of that show to re-air on AMC ahead of the show's return. Whoever's coding IMDb is guessing 2022, which at that point will have been off the air for at least a year and a half, so it'd actually be nice to have a refresher going into it, on a couple of levels actually, given that the show premiered during the Dark Ages for this collection. On disc 1102, I found an episode of Harper's Island and noticed that Jim Beaver, Bobby Singer from Supernatural, was cast as the sheriff. While in the Better Call Saul episode of Breaking Bad, I also noticed DJ Qualls, who played a hunter named Garth in Supernatural. He was helping the DEA track meth dealers, so that was kind of fun. Most fun was at the end of the episode, though, when Saul walks into Walter White's classroom, illustrating to him how easy it is, in fact, to find him. Very cool introduction to a character with, as we've since learned, quite a colorful past. Running through a few things quite quickly, given how long this has actually taken for me. On disc 1107, I encountered the second season finale of Chuck, which featured a huge upgrade for the title character, along with an archive of quite randomly accessible database of facts with international intrigue, by now hopelessly out of date. Chuck has access to the muscle memory of a spy, essentially all of the martial arts and weapon certification he could ever need. That brought some serious fun to subsequent seasons. More of a curiosity, but on disc 1110, in a first season episode of Fringe, I ran into the song Tear You Apart by She Wants Revenge. I guess I'd characterize the band's music as darkly cynical, but it held enough appeal for me that I added their self-titled LP to my CD collection when I was still buying CDs. Later I realized that She Wants Revenge is what it would sound like if Daleks sang, but the main point of the episode, the run-up to the first season finale titled There's More Than One of Everything, was to prepare us for the concept of duality and bilocation and to get us thinking about where Massive Dynamics' Billy Bell actually is. Also on disc 1122 ran into the episode of Reaper where Tyler Labine plans a bachelor party for a wedding that's already been cancelled, but they're doing the bachelor party anyway. That took me all the way back to episode 6 of this effort and the original concept for something called Big Bear, which from the show description on IMDb sounds like it changed quite a lot over the course of production, but still looking forward to watching it one day. This one had stripper clowns, so your move, promising young woman. On disc 1104, I found the first season finale of Ashes to Ashes, in which, back in time, Alex did everything in her power to avert the death of her parents via car bomb. The information she did not have, being a child at the time, was that the explosion was actually a suicide. Her deeply troubled father killed himself, his, he believed, faithless wife, and their daughter, hoping to reunite in the afterlife sans adultery. As it happens, the 9-year-old Alex escaped at the last moment, and from out of nowhere, her boss, Detective Chief Inspector Gene Hunt, swooped in and carried her to safety. Alex saw the video her father put together for the police, which Gene then destroyed, feeling there was no way a young girl would be capable of processing that information, and best to let her believe her parents perished in a terrible accident, which, as a psychologist, Alex can see the logic. Also, Jean wouldn't even have been there to save her 9-year-old self without Alex's meddling, so wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey. It turns out she managed the best protection she could for herself after all. There was a significant episode of Grey's Anatomy that I found on disc 1114, No Good at Saying Sorry, One More Chance, where a frantic wife and mother was adamantly lying to protect her young daughter from consequences. The daughter said that she shot her father, now in a coma, to protect her mother and herself. Another patient had been up in a tree, trying to keep developers from cutting it down. The focus of the episode seemed to be the importance of speaking up for people who do not have a voice, which is good energy to release into the world. This was also the episode that they ran All Thieves' promotional single, Turn and Turn Again, which is a difficult song to track down, and it wasn't released anywhere commercially. It's possible to pull it up on YouTube, however, and I'll include a link in my show notes. It's a really chill and caring vibe, and I was really happy to discover it here. Speaking of real tears, what? I'm not crying, you're crying. America's addiction to guns, violence, and police brutality is perfectly healthy. Totally supersedes my right not to be randomly murdered while anywhere at all, and we should absolutely be having a spate of mass shootings all the time. That's what? What do I know? It's probably just fine. Orphans, widows. If anyone's pain mattered, probably someone would do something. And since that's not the case, I guess everything's fine. I was just going to mention I found an IFC presentation of Moulin Rouge from 2001 on disc 1116. I forgot to list this among my favorite movies last time, but it is. This movie was pretty important to me a couple decades back. It's one of the few I saw in theaters multiple times, and I guess I was feeling pretty depressed back then, lonely, and this movie was a real source of comfort to me. The possibilities of finding love one day, hope. I'd enjoyed Baz Luhrmann's MTV version of Romeo and Juliet a few years before and was over the friggin' moon with this all-singing, all-dancing, reverently anachronistic treatment of music and setting. I enjoyed the structure of the piece, Ewan and Nicole, the Christian and Satine, the joy that they'd found, their tragic loss, and the truth that shone above all things. The greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return. Truth, beauty, freedom, and love. I salute you, children of the revolution. Closeout to this set is kind of on theme, On disc 1125, I'd archived IFC's presentation of Damon Wayans playing a frustrated TV writer in Spike Lee's year 2000 social commentary, Bamboozled. Part of it, anyway, the first part. I may watch the rest and for real comment on it next time when I pull up disc 1126 and catalog it. It's visually stunning, and from what I've seen so far, I'd call it a groundbreaking exploration of artists of color navigating the cultural landscape post-Family Matters, hip-hop, and In Living Color, and ahead of RuPaul's Drag Race and The Boondocks. Oh, and all of Tyler Perry's movies. But between you, me, and your earbuds, if I never hear the N-word come out of Michael Rapaport again, that'd be fine. I mean, yay uncensored, but when you've already pretty much got one of the world's most punchable faces, him letting fly as network suit Thomas Dunwitty is just taking his position at one of those test your strength things at a county fair, giving everyone comically oversized mallets and pointing really hard. It's the character, I know, but oh, he sells it. I'll watch or I won't. We'll all find out soon enough.
Checking out my current collection.
In my current direct-to-DVD archives, I've managed to add 7 discs to my collection while this past week actually clearing out my DVR. It's very exciting, but no sooner do I do that than IFC starts airing Lorne Michaels' CBC series Kids in the Hall from the very beginning, and I'm absolutely going to be archiving that. In episode 30, good friend and friend of the podcast, Nathan Irwin, and I discussed the origin of my VHS collection, some of the shows we were watching around then. It feels like some channel must have been airing Kids in the Hall while we were in college. I'm not certain I have any recordings of them going back that far, and any recordings I do have are likely to be incomplete, so I will absolutely be taking advantage of this wonderful opportunity now that I've pretty much got all episodes of Community that IFC has rebroadcast. There are a couple. One I mentioned last time, IFC ABC isn't even re-airing the second season Advanced Dungeons & Dragons episode. It could be all kinds of reasons for this. My best guess is that the show themes touch on bullying and suicide, so for whatever reason they're not re-airing that one, or it looks like from their lineup one of the season 6 episodes, so I'll just have to track those down via streaming services, and then I'll have seen all of Community, like, really recently. I know. Brag. The season of Cake has come back really strong. The live-action series, 9 short films about technology, has explored some seriously dark places, including, at one point, a social media-obsessed teen drops her phone in an outhouse and tries to retrieve it. Oh, honey, no, that phone was stolen. You cut that loss. Honestly, you'd never be able to use it again. There's not enough bleach on the planet. They also explore the process of a sweet, lonely old woman falling for an internet scam, so public service on some level. Not that I imagine that demographic is tuning into Cake, but, well, I am, I guess, so, yeah. Superstore ended really strong, I thought. I mean, it's been over a month, but still a spoiler at this point. I'll try to tread lightly. The run-up to the finale was really fun. I mentioned Kids in the Hall up there. Well, Mark McKinney has played store manager Glenn throughout, and one of the last episodes reunited him with Dave Foley, who essentially played a Kids in the Hall character, son of the store founder who showed up and left us crazy streak of chaos in his wake ahead of the bombshell announcement that the stores were all about to close. Any longtime fans of the show will appreciate the love and heart they managed to weave into the finale. America Ferrera's return was powerful and brought some brilliant closure to the situation. As the camera pans out, we get the sense that these people will be cared for and that they're going to be okay even as their situations change. I will note this is easily one of the strongest workplace comedies I've seen in terms of talking about workers' rights. I feel like I have to go back actually to Sally Field and Norma Ray to get someone shouting the word union at the top of their lungs. So Norma Ray in 1979 to Sandra Kaluuya-Kalani in 2019. That's 40 years. I'm certain there's been some mention of a union in some other context between those two events. South Park had all of Canada go on strike right about when the writers did in 2008, which I actually talked about back in episode 33. But yeah, when unions make an appearance in pop culture, generally it's not flattering, which is bizarre given the fact that everyone involved in the portrayal on stage and behind the scenes is in a union. I just wanted to appreciate the willingness of a situation comedy on network television to discuss conditions, including for undocumented workers, including for LGBTQ persons, including for discussion of corporate culture, and dealing with the realities of working during a pandemic. Watching these people navigate their workday amid frustrating, disruptive changes one day to the next, I imagine was probably pretty relatable for millions of essential workers nationwide. Great job, you guys. Awesome show, awesome close. Well done. I saw where I included a scrap of National Geographic's The 80s, the decade that made us. That was a mistake I was planning to delete before finalizing the disc, and I forgot. Nat Geo aired 6 nostalgia reels. Well, way more than that. These were just the ones I felt like pulling up for viewing. Unfortunately, whenever the episode ran original clips from the time, the audio cut out, sometimes for entire seconds before cutting back in again, generally right when they were going back to the narrator. The sound needed to be re-engineered properly for me to even bother with it. As it was, that was a hard pass for me. I did enjoy the TBS production of Chad, Saturday Night Live's Nassim Pedrad's creation of this status-obsessed 14-year-old boy dealing with high school issues like sex and drugs and popularity and social media and what other people think of you and family. Like, he's estranged from his father, his uncle is clueless, his mother is distracted by dating, and his relationship with his sister seems complicated. I've seen 2 episodes. I feel like none of the stuff I went through in high school went quite like this, but I can relate absolutely every part of this kid. The awkwardness, wanting people to like me, just saying the wrong things. The pilot episode, I could really feel Chad's inner monologue saying, like, oh my god, stop talking now. Why are you still talking? Why is the earth not swallowing me into its crust through sheer force of will that I stop talking? It's not perfect, but like I said, as of this recording, I've seen 2 episodes, and so far I'm loving this show. On the Bubble is the CW's Kung Fu, following the adventures of Olivia Liang as ex-law student Nikki Shen, who, overwhelmed by her family's expectations while traveling in China, fled her mother's medley matchmaking to join a monastery, studying under her shifu Peiling Zhang for 3 years as part of a remote monastic order. When Zhang is slain during an attack on the compound, Nikki returns home, only to find her family's business and associates the target of predatory loan sharks in the midst of a community troubled by crime, isolation, and unrest. Drawing on her training, some old friends, and help from her family, Nikki seeks to do what good she can while avenging her fallen teacher, whose instruction was to always find the peace within. An awesome premise and a really solid core story open to all kinds of family dynamics and drama and opportunities for problem solving, not to mention badass martial arts and general do-goodery in pursuit of a larger mystery centered on a mystical arsenal long hidden under the protection of her shifu's orders, so there's also some fantastic spiritual lore and legend woven into the piece. I just can't ignore the production credit on this. Executive producer Greg Berlanti, responsible for Eli Stone, Brothers and Sisters, and God Friended Me, which I've never watched an episode, but bleh. I'm hearing good things about his Superman and Lois, none of which make me want to watch them, but his Brothers and Sisters fingerprints are all over this. The easy plotting, bringing just the right clue to just the right person, and oh, wow, especially the goopy, soapy family drama. Nikki's sister, the bride, about her 2nd or 3rd day back from being gone for 3 years, texting her, "You be at my cake tasting or I'll kill you. Love you." Like, 2 or 3 days ago, she was zero part of this planning for this, as far as I could tell, imminent wedding, but is somehow your maid of honor. And his signature move for short, choppy, dramatic dialogue to heighten the tension in any scene is gruesome. It's always the last word or two of whoever spoke repeated in shocked surprise. Shocked surprise? And then there's an awkward pause. I'll see if I can demonstrate. Demonstrate! Oh, please, yes, demonstrate. By all means, demonstrate. I'm sorry, I was just trying to be clear. Clear? You want to be clear? Oh, I'll give you clear. Your father waited up for you all night. Is that clear enough for you? Ramping up to the inevitable talking over each other. And rewatching Brothers and Sisters for this project, by the time I gave up on it, that was like 60% of the writing on the show. Oh, it was constant and completely unmistakable.
Seriously, over and over again, ad nauseum, repeating themselves, and there's no chance any of them can be understood or responded to.
Understood and responded to. That's a lot.
Just like that, once again. No, it's always exactly the same. A perfectly nice family dinner party ruined by, well, this family.
Now, I don't know enough about any of the Chens to know whether that's the case. You see where the energy goes in that. It's just too easy. Some pains have been taken to differentiate motivations for different family members, but 2 episodes in, this style of writing is so unmistakable and insufferable. I mean, really, the show has some of the best visuals since Buffy, but that kind of writing is going to become a hard pass for me. VideoFuzzy at the movies. I mentioned way back there that I had some sewing to do, and while I did so, I had a chance to watch several movies, including a few I mentioned up there already, and the FX presentation of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse from 2018. TNT aired Aquaman, also from 2018. Sci-Fi gave us Aaron Paul tracking down a mystery in Come and Find Me from 2016. Not really science fiction, but a fun, tense, high-energy thriller. I did see just the most god-awful presentation, Eyewitness, from 1981 on FXM Retro. Really unfortunate. A lot of A-lister involvement in that one, including Sigourney Weaver, William Hurt, Christopher Plummer somehow, Morgan Freeman. Actually, absolutely, James Woods would totally be in this. The rest should see if they can get IMDb to misspell their names really badly. This hate crime of a movie was 103 minutes long, at a time that should be spent watching absolutely anything else. Gross. Better was the 2006 production of Denzel Washington and Clive Owen in Inside Man on Sundance. Actually added Sapna Aswathi and Sukhwinder Singh's Chaya Chaya from that soundtrack to my collection. That music had some absolutely fantastic energy, and FX showed Widows from 2018, two truly enjoyable heist films, if not entirely credible and over-reliant on a couple of tropes, Nazi war profiteering in the one and corruption in Chicago politics in the other. Not pretending neither exists, but as I've said elsewhere, the Nazis were not the last full measure of evil in human history. In both cases, it's basically shorthand, so the writers don't need to bog us down with a lot of additional information. It's high-stakes corruption, it's Nazis, it's city politics in Chicago, etc. The backdrops are looking a little threadbare. Go ahead and describe a few new situations against which events can unfold. Briefly, I enjoyed the documentary FX put together on female stand-up comedians and the conditions they face throughout the history of television and out on the road. Hysterical is well worth tracking down. I friggin' loved Bohemian Rhapsody, the FX presentation from 2018. Rami Malek was a delight and a revelation, and directed by, Bryan Singer. Refer as above. Finally, I wanted to close on a relatively high note. I enjoyed watching the FXX presentation of Escape Room from 2019, featuring a group of adventurous souls roped into what seems like an immersive escape room experience. As the challenges progress, the participants come to realize the lengths their hosts have gone to, and the terrible odds they're facing. And I didn't realize until I pulled up the cast list that I'd been enjoying the work of Tyler Labine, just as in the second season of Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency. I just was not placing that sweet, smushy face of his until I looked him up. The standout performances by Taylor Russell as Zoe and Logan Miller as Ben in Escape Room is just kind of a potboiler, but an inventive take on the genre. And on the topic of movies, I mentioned watching some Oscar nominees for Best Picture. My friend Jesse recently, we took in Nomadland, A Promising Young Woman, Judas and the Black Messiah, and The Trial of the Chicago 7. I'm looking forward to watching the other four nominees, Minari, Mank, The Father, and Sound of Metal, ahead of the awards ceremony. As I'm cobbling this installment together week of, I suspect that goal will be something of a photo finish, but however it happens, I absolutely enjoyed both the films and the company. Also, if you've been enjoying this podcast and would like to be a part of my 4th anniversary special in June, that would be delightful. Please drop me a note or get some audio to me however you'd like. I've got Messenger on my Facebook. I've got an email link through my show notes, and feedback of any kind is welcome. And with that, I just want to thank you so much for checking in my video cataloging project. You can check out my catalog listing along with audio links at VideoFuzzy.blogspot.com, and for past episodes, add, subscribe, or follow VideoFuzzy anywhere you get your podcasts. As I was saying before, you can contact me through my blog or podcast sites via email or through my VideoFuzzy page on Facebook, or you can follow me at TJVideoFuzzy on Twitter. For VideoFuzzy, I'm Terry J. Aman. Happy viewing.
It might be amazing, it might just be scuzzy. We'll find out together on VideoFuzzy.